Hello, all you ghosts and goblins out there. I'm Ashton, and welcome to my chaotic, organized channel. This channel is very much a very loose definition of order, where it kind of is revolved around me as a horror writer and all things associated with it. Today, and really, for this whole month, my life is going to be very much consumed by working on the final draft of, or I guess the final version of my manuscript that I will be hopefully sending off to publishers near the end ish of this month. And I thought it would be a good idea to go ahead and do another one of those AuthorTube Get to Know Me Newbie list questionnaires. So, without further ado, and I apologize, I am going to be on my phone for this just because for the past several months I have been working exclusively from my phone and I'm still trying to get my bearings set back up with using a laptop again. So, thank you for bearing with me. The questions that I grabbed, I just kind of Googled um, AuthorTube Newbie questionnaires, and I found a list on iWriterly.com, and I will link it in the comments down below. So if you want to do it, you can do so as well. And so without further ado, the first question that I am answering is, what genres do you write in? So I just said that this channel is related to me as a horror writer, and I would say that that is primarily what I have been writing in. This channel started with me posting these 31 tales for Halloween, and that was really not necessarily the direction that I wanted to take this channel, but it has slowly kind of crept into several different areas of my life. And so right now I have the horror manuscript that I'm working on. I also have the series I do with my friend Kayla that is taking Taylor Swift songs and turning them into horror stories. And I also run a cryptid podcast with my friends Sean and Andrew called The Night Scholars. So all of those kind of are horror, but I would say that I do actually dabble with pretty much every single genre. I have been writing for, I did the math earlier, but about 25 years. Yeah, 25 years, that's right. So I have had a very long time to kind of explore. I would say that all of the genres interest me. I don't know if I would be great at writing children's stories, but I do have a children's story in mind. And the other genre that I don't think that I will ever touch would be fantasy. And it's not because I don't enjoy fantasy from time to time, although it might be my least favorite genre. It's more of a, there is so much effort that has to be put into writing fantasy. And I don't know if I personally have the patience to do so much of the world building and so much of the system creation. I'm much more of a taking things that are already relevant and making them into a story type of person, which I know that fantasy does too, but I can't come up with things from the ground up like that. I can come up with characters, which is really my specialty, is just characters. But I just don't see myself writing fantasy just because of the amount of effort it is to write it, which probably makes that one of my like most respected genres to read though. So the second question is, what is your preferred writing tense? So I tend to gravitate towards past tense, and I'm not sure if that's because I have a pretty long standing history with depression, and I'm pretty sure that, please correct me if I'm wrong, but that people who have a tendency towards depression, because their brains are so preoccupied in the past, I think that my brain typically goes towards past tense because my brain spends too much time thinking and reflecting on the past events and not so much in the present. Although I have been working on present tense a little bit more lately, um, just because I read a book, a dark academia book recently that was completely present tense, and it was really inspiring. I thought it was very well done, and of course, I am blanking on the name of that right now. I will put it in the description if I remember to. So, past tense is just the easier one for me. I think that I will probably be gravitating towards present tense in the future, but for now, present or past tense just because it's easier. What is my preferred point of view? I I like first person point of view. The manuscript that I'm working on right now is third person just because I switch a lot between the three main characters' points of views, and it makes more sense in my head to do the switching versus chapters dedicated to their different points of views, even though that is kind of my preferred genre, like all of the Ellen Hopkins books. I loved them switching back and forth from points of views. I think there was also one of the Redwall series books when I was younger that did the same thing, and I really like that. I don't know if all of them do that, but I do appreciate a good first person point of view. Um, and then what is your preferred category of story? I would have to say I'm gonna go with young adult for right now, just because when I first started writing novels and really in general writing when I was a kid, when I first started off writing, I wrote as a kid, and then I moved into YA as I got more mature. And I am just more comfortable with it because I have written more in that. Like, I kind of stopped writing a bit as an adult, and I can write from them, but I think in some ways that teenagers feel emotions so strongly and so intensely that there's a lot to be explored there. And I think for right now, that is a preference. But the next manuscript that I will be working on is, or plan to be working on, is strictly adult. I think there are maybe two teenagers in the story, but it's a cast of like 12 to 14 characters. So I will see how I kind of like feel like writing for that. I think I've had like a good mix of YA and adult in my Taylor Swift series. And same with the 31 Tales for Halloween. I did write those a couple of years back, but I do think that a lot of those were more adult. So I don't know. I will say question mark on that one, and I will be right back. And I am back with some cozy mystery vibes. aka I put on a cardigan or whatever you call this. Question 4. Are you a plotter, a pantser, or a plantser? Um, I think I covered this last time. And I'm going to say that in order to actually write my book, this is the first manuscript that I have ever actually completed, and it was only able to be done by the fact that I wrote for or I worked on the outline for 30 days before I ever got to start writing my book. And during that process, I really built up the story, and I've been really kind of enjoying doing that same process over again for my second manuscript. And I think that through that, I'm able to get a very nice skeleton. Whereas in the past, I have just kind of like started writing and never finished it because there needed to be the skeleton. Now, I would consider myself a plantser, which is somebody in between a plotter and a pantser. So, plotter is somebody who knows what they're going to be doing while they go into it, and that is what they stick to. Like, think the outlines that you have to do for research papers, whereas a pantser is just sit down and sees where the story takes them. And once I actually sit down, I had my outline in front of me, and from there I kind of let my characters do the talking for me. And I think that it's really interesting doing the revisions that I'm doing now, because after getting my beta readers' feedback, it was very apparent to me that even though I knew my characters, my readers did not know my characters as well as I did. Everybody seemed to agree on the fact that they hated this one girl at the beginning and loved this other girl, and by the end of the book, it was switched. And so I have my own personal opinions about which character I like and dislike the most. But I didn't think that that was very fair to either of those girls, that they were liked or hated at the beginning and their roles switched at the end, because I think that they were more complicated than that. So I've added scenes that really give you more of a reason to root for the character that ends up being everybody's favorite from the beginning. And I intend to, when I get to it, add some more scenes that make the character that ends up being hated at the end seem significantly more sympathetic. And so I'll be curious to see how that ends up changing viewers' opinions once I have made these changes to the story. And there are also some elements that I wasn't entirely sure if I wanted to add in or if they were unnecessary. And I'm now starting to recognize just how necessary they were. And so I would say that I'm a mixture of both, because I think that if I was a total plotzer, or whatever word, plotter, that I think I would be devastated by the feedback that I was given and like be like, oh no, I don't know how to go back and change things. Whereas with this, like, I know the core of my story, and I will happily add elements to flesh that out while still staying true to my characters, because my characters are very much the driving force behind any of my stories. I think that was a little bit long-winded, but you get the gist. Um, are you self-published, published, or yet to be published? I think I've already answered that enough. Well, maybe I haven't. So, as far as novels are concerned, I am yet to be published, but I am published in poetry, and my very first time being published was back in third grade. And honestly, I've been riding that high for a very long time. So I've been published, I counted it out at one point, but like 7+ times. I'm skipping a couple of these questions just because I've already answered them. And skipping on to question 9, which is, what was the first story you ever wrote? So the first story that I ever wrote was in first grade. There was me and this boy who were kind of class rivals. And I don't think that we had a specific story that we were supposed to follow, or maybe we did. I don't remember at this point. That was 25 years ago. But it was a story about I think it was a boy who was assigned to take home the class egg project over the weekend. This was kind of a class assignment where everybody watched the egg and they were supposed to be studying the different stages of development. And he was really excited to bring it home. And while it was at his house, the egg started to hatch. And me, being the ever loving creative that I am, it was not a chicken and it wasn't a dinosaur, which I think most kids would have written about, but it was a ostrich. And I don't know why. I think that ostrich might have been, that was it. So the story, it had to use our different vocab words. So I made it about an ostrich. And the ostrich hatches, and the whole story is about this kid's adventures with the class ostrich that hatches on his watch, and everything that he has to do while he is trying to get all the grown-ups in his life to help him raise this ostrich over the weekend, and all of these like little silly shenanigans that he gets into. And I remember writing that story, getting really into it, grabbing more and more pieces of paper because my rival was also grabbing them and reading it out loud to my grandparents, my mom, who I was living with at the time, and being so happy with how much pride they had and watching me just kind of like flourish as like a young writer. And both me and the rival boys stories ended up being really good, to the extent where the teacher had us read them out loud to the principal, and the principal was to decide who had the better story. And I remember liking my rival's story. And I was so happy though when I was like looking at the principal's face, because the principal obviously liked mine more and was more impressed with mine. And I don't remember what I won, but I definitely won his seal of approval and won this competition that was never supposed to be a competition. And yeah, that was my first story, and I wish that I still had a copy of it because I'm pretty proud of it still to this day. What authors have inspired your writing the most? I would say that J.K. Rowling was definitely a big influence on my life. I was one of those kids who got to grow up reading the series. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone was the first novel that I ever read. And I remembered having countless conversations with my friend about what was going to happen in the next books. When the title for Order of the Phoenix was released, we really kind of talked about all the directions that the book could go into. And I didn't really recognize it at the time, but those conversations definitely helped fuel my creative fire because I was trying to guess stories and I was writing my own stories. I think I wrote some Harry Potter fan fiction back in the day. I definitely wrote Teen Titans fan fiction back in the day. So whoever the writers were of Teen Titans, that influenced me. And I also, now as an adult, obviously as a horror writer, I pull from Stephen King a little bit. And I also pull from Neil Gaiman. And I think who I absolutely aspire to be like is Donna Tartt. Do you schedule your writing sessions or simply get to writing whenever you can find the time? Whenever I am actually actively being serious about writing instead of just doing it for fun, for my manuscript specifically, I do have a set time block that I try to work on, or at least a set amount of time. So when I was writing the first draft, it was always, I wasn't working at the time, and I would always start working on it around 11 p.m. and I would work on it until 2 to 4 a.m., just depending on how much energy I had and how the story was going at that particular point and where my stopping points were. I think Stephen King is the one who mentioned it, or it might have been Neil Gaiman. I've listened to interviews or I've read Stephen King's book on writing, and I've listened to interviews of Neil Gaiman and his writing process. I don't know whose is whose. But, anyways, one of them said that a good way to write is to stop in the middle of an action. And that is what I tend to do when writing because it's a lot easier to pick up on writing when you are stopping in the middle of action because you know where that is going to go and it gives you an exciting point to get back to. And right now, I don't really have a specific time that I'm trying to write, but I am trying to edit for a minimum of 3 hours a day for this month. Now, I did have to correct myself earlier where I said that I always do that because for the Taylor Swift But Make It Horror series, Kayla can vouch for this that I am very bad at actually writing my stuff in a timely manner. I very much rely on the last minute panic for those stories. Kayla can vouch for me that I do kind of write stuff at the last minute. We kind of do interviews ahead of the story releases. And there was one story called Lurking Assumptions that I sent her a partial draft of and was like, hi, this is the story and this is the plot, but don't directly quote me because I'm going to be editing the story. And she's like, you're going to be editing the story that we are interviewing on Thursday, editing it on Friday, and then posting on Saturday. I'm like, that sounds about right. I'm so sorry. So I think it really just depends on the seriousness of the assignment or how long it is. maybe more so like how long it is, because like the 31 Tales, I really published all of those as a self punishment because I wrote them as a personal challenge to myself like 2 years prior to posting. And I told myself that I wanted to put them together as a collection. And because I didn't work on it for 2 years, I was like, no, I'm not going to back down from this again. I'm going to post this on YouTube in whatever form they are in and actually make promises to myself. So, mixed bag. Question 12. Do you type on a computer, typewriter, write everything out by hand, or use a blend of those? And where do you write in general? First off, I would love to write on a typewriter. The amount of mistakes, because I am so used to autocorrect, would drive me insane, but I think that it's so aesthetically cool. So that being said, I do write primarily on my computer. I have pretty bad rheumatoid arthritis, and writing something by hand just really isn't practical for me anymore. And I don't really like, even if I was capable of writing by hand, I don't particularly like switching back and forth between computer and notebook. So everything is done on computer. I'm way faster at computer. My words per minute on the computer are significantly faster than my handwriting speed. And I also tend to go back and edit sentences as I am actively writing. So, in a lot of ways, it just kind of works better for me. If I'm handwriting something, there would be like a million different arrows being like, no, take this section, add it up here. Whereas on the computer, I can just copy and paste different things, especially for if a person has a specific memory. Then I can just like go back and I can like search up like the specific phrase and add it and copy that section, paste it, and then kind of copy from it. So that way, like I get it word for word correctly. And as far as where I write in general, I write in this room for the most part. Well, when I have a laptop, I haven't had a laptop for the past several months. But anyways, so when I have a laptop and for my manuscript, I did write in this room. When I did not have a laptop, I went to the local library to work. And whenever I have extra money to splurge, I do like to go to coffee shops. I think that it's just better for me as an extrovert to kind of get outside and write, so that way I'm picking up on the energies from everybody else. And I just find that really aesthetically pleasing in my mind, and I romanticize the shit out of that. Okay, and those are all of the questions that I think are relevant to me. I appreciate you if you made it this far, and I hope that if you are somebody who likes the idea of writing but feels intimidated to do so, that you learn to set aside those thoughts and embrace writing, because you don't have to have ambitions to be a world famous author. You don't have to be the next prolific writer from your area to write a story, because if you think about it, you are a storyteller every single day. You talk to your friends, you talk to your family, you talk to your significant other about the events that happened in your life. And I'm sure that they find you funny. I'm sure that they find you heartwarming. And if you can do that, if you can make the people in your life happy, and if you can express the way that you feel and the way that you think, you're already on the way to become a good storyteller. And I hope that you admire that in yourself and that you don't get caught up in your own anxieties, because the world will never stop wanting to hear stories. I hope that you have a good night or a good day, depending on when you are listening to this. And I will catch you in the next video. Bye.